For decades, China was known for making cheap copies, cheap phones, cheap products, and cheap cars. Nobody thought China would ever become a leader in the automotive world. The best cars came from Germany, the biggest manufacturers came from America, and the most reliable vehicles came from Japan. China wasn't even part of the conversation. But today, some of the world's biggest car companies are watching China very carefully. Because the country that was once dismissed as a follower may have just pulled off one of the most impressive comebacks in automotive history. For most of the 20th century, China had almost no influence on the global car industry. While Ford was transforming America, Toyota was revolutionizing manufacturing, and German brands were building a reputation for engineering excellence. China was still developing its economy and automotive sector. When Chinese car companies finally started appearing, they weren't treated as serious competitors. Many of their early vehicles looked remarkably similar to models already being sold by foreign manufacturers, and their reputation for quality was far behind what customers expected from brands like BMW, Mercedes, Toyota, or Honda. For years, it seemed obvious how the future would play out. Europe, America, and Japan would continue leading the industry, while China would remain years behind. But behind the scenes, China was preparing for an opportunity that most of the world didn't even see coming. At the time, the global automotive industry revolved around one thing: the gasoline engine. Every major manufacturer had spent decades refining it. Billions of dollars had been invested into factories, research, and supply chains designed around internal combustion. The entire industry was built on that foundation. Then electric vehicles started gaining attention. Most traditional automakers weren't convinced. Batteries were expensive, charging infrastructure was limited, and electric cars were often viewed as slow, impractical, and unattractive. Many executives believed gasoline engines would remain dominant for decades. China looked at the situation differently. Instead of trying to catch Germany, Japan, and America in a race they had already been winning for generations, China decided to focus on the next chapter of the industry. If electric vehicles were the future, China wanted to arrive there first. It was a massive gamble, but it would eventually change everything. As the rest of the world continued focusing primarily on traditional vehicles, China began investing heavily in electric transportation. Factories were built across the country, battery manufacturers received enormous support, and dozens of new companies entered the market hoping to become the next major automotive brand. One of those companies stood out: BYD. Interestingly, BYD wasn't originally known as a car company. It started as a battery manufacturer, and that turned out to be one of its greatest strengths. Because while many automakers saw batteries as just another component, BYD understood that batteries would become the heart of the electric vehicle revolution. The company expanded rapidly, improving its technology and increasing production year after year. And as battery production grew, costs began to fall. China wasn't just learning how to build electric cars. It was learning how to build them at a scale few countries could match. Then came Tesla. When Tesla proved that electric vehicles could actually be desirable, the entire industry was forced to pay attention. Suddenly, electric cars weren't seen as boring alternatives anymore. They were fast, modern, and exciting. Customers who had never considered buying an EV suddenly wanted one. Demand exploded. But while many traditional automakers were rushing to react, China had already spent years preparing for this exact moment. Battery production was expanding, factories were operating at enormous scale, and Chinese manufacturers were launching new models at a pace that surprised the rest of the industry. The companies that had once been laughed at were becoming legitimate competitors. And they were improving faster than anyone expected. And if you like these types of videos, subscribe and comment on what other videos you'd like to see on the channel.